Council meeting. Please note that this meeting is being live screened. I'll now ask the Vice Chairman to read the safety notice, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We're not expecting a fire drill today, so if the fire alarm sounds, we will evacuate the building. There are two fire exits from this room. One is through the double doors where you came in at the back, and the other is to the right, your right of the stage, which leads to the external fire escape. Please note that you should not use the lift in the event of a fire. And in the event of an evacuation, we will meet to the left of the driveway at the main entrance to Thorpe Lodge. Thank you.
Of interest. Yes. Any?
No, Chairman.
No declarations. Thank you. Item number 2. Apologies for absence.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank
Claire.
you, Chairman. I've received apologies from councillors Bullman, Adams, Hempsall, King, Mackey, Gurney, Lawn, Harrison, Cook and Neeson.
Thank you for that.
Can I also give the apologies for Nigel Shaw, who's unwell?
Right. Thank you very much. Item number 3 on the agenda is the future office accommodation. And before we proceed with this item, I will ask the monitoring officer to make a few comments, please, which are relevant to the dealing with this item.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like the opportunity to remind Council that the report is in 2 parts, and I would further remind you that there is a mutual confidentiality agreement in place. So should the debate stray into confidential areas, I will be asking the Chairman to take us into private session. So please bear this in mind with the questions that you ask in public session.
Thank you for that. Yes.
Chair, just on that, just a couple of questions. We're essentially going to have a 2-part meeting, just asking you about your judgment as to people's right to speak in both parts, whereas normally you only get one go in a debate. As we're going to have an open session and then closed, it seemed to make sense that people be able to ask questions in the closed after they've spoken in the open. And the other question is, given that tonight's vote is about something that is actually bigger than the budget, is to request that any votes tonight are recorded.
Thank you, Councillor Roper. So in terms of speaking on items, you're well aware, as I am, standing orders allow members to speak once on the item. Therefore, if we wish to change that, we would need to suspend standing orders.
Yes, further question?
That we either suspend that element of standing orders, please, or that the chair uses his discretion to override that part of the standing orders. I would second.
So you have a proposer and a second to suspend standing orders. In terms of suspending those, Leader?
Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry. I think this, bearing in mind the gravity of what we're talking about and the opportunity for us to go through in detail what needs to go through tonight, that I would suggest that in line with what's being proposed, that the suspension of standing orders would be the appropriate thing to do to enable us to talk at the chairman's discretion more than once should we need to in the debate as it goes forward in the different stages, and therefore we won't have to worry so much around the different stages in relation to item 3. So I would support that.
Right, you've heard the proposal there. Could we have a show of hands? Those in favour, please?
That's carried, Chairman.
That's carried, yeah. Right. We can now move on to the item now. Right, we can now move on to item 3, discussion thereof. Could we have a proposer, please? Councillor Emsell.
Good evening, councillors. I will be starting on page 5, which is the part of the agenda that we can go to. Obviously, the exempt minutes are all in the pink papers. So obviously, if you've got a question from the pink papers, obviously that will be the exempt part. As always, Broadland are leading the way in Norfolk. After securing an amazing new waste contract that improves the council's carbon footprint, we look to go further and update our council office, improving the council's environmental commitments with a newer and greener building. Something that has been in the minds of councillors for many years is a new building. For over 10 years, a new modern building has been considered. The Conservative administration has always been very careful with taxpayers' money, and residents trust us to be financially sensible. So these plans have always been on the back burner. We now have the opportunity to further the financial savings made by our collaboration project to house our one team in one building, saving running costs of the current 2 sites, a building that can reduce our carbon footprint by over 80%, with future improvements possible to show that we are a forward-thinking council and will be carbon neutral before other Norfolk councils. With the added bonus of not passing these costs on of the office move onto residents, working with our collaboration partners in South Norfolk means we can halve the costs and cover the costs with the redevelopment of our current sites. This is a win for the council, a win for the environment, and a win for residents. Our staff are the biggest asset we have. Our one team officers back the move to a new modern building as they come back to office working together. The new building will be an enjoyable and exciting place to work that gives us improved employment opportunities. Consider this. If we were in the Horizon building today, would we think of a change that would split our staff over 2 sites, 14 miles apart, cost significant sums more per year, and increase our carbon footprint by over 80%? I wholeheartedly recommend the report to Cabinet. I would like to introduce a couple of short videos to help set the scene.
I said we still came into the office all the time because we had to have a presence here. Yeah. However, I felt disconnected from a massive part of my team because 90% of them were working from home at one point. Now we're all together and we've hopefully built something which they want to come in and do. Yeah. They want to be part of because it's useful. It's just nice to talk to them. And work officious stuff can normally be done on Teams, but it's the non-officious stuff which is actually better to do in person.
It's meeting people, isn't it? And I think that because of the pandemic, there was quite a lot of people in our teams that we'd never met. And I think that they haven't met each other, which I think was fine on Teams, but you don't get to build relationships as much. I think already people are getting to know each other more. And we'd like to do some sessions where people can kind of put faces to a name.
Speed dating.
Yeah, a little bit of speed dating or something like that. Because you may actually believe that someone's been sitting over the way from you, just don't know what they look like. Pre-pandemic, we hadn't achieved bringing everyone together because there wasn't space and what have you. But now with the hybrid of working from home and working from the office, it means that we perhaps don't need quite as much space as we did before. So we're able to have this one space and people can kind of come and go, sit together and move around. We've moved housing upstairs and the police back upstairs so that we are now more of a hub. We'll have children's services back in here as well, they're not already, and other partners. So it's getting back to, I suppose, what it used to be before. So we can have these kind of chance conversations, and although we would share information where it's necessary, actually, ideas and projects and stuff, I think come up because people can just talk to each other.
The formal side of things was done throughout the pandemic. We did some great stuff, data sharing, but when you mention a resident's name and it's just an off chance comment, and then all of a sudden police say, oh, I know something that's happening with them, and then someone in children's services says, oh, well, I'm kind of working on them. All of a sudden you've got a multi-agency approach when there wasn't anything, it was just a load of people working in isolation. Yeah. That's where the hack works. Yeah. And that's why you need people in the office, because those off chance conversations don't happen so much when you're on the phone.
is my connection with the Horizon building. So prior to collaboration, I was a long-standing Broadland member of staff, and I guess I'm able to give the perspective of somebody that has actually worked in the Horizon building. And I have to say, I'm really excited about the prospect of returning to that building. From a staff's perspective, it's light and airy, there's lots of space in there, and it's always felt a space where, despite the size, it was always cosy corners and lots of little offices, breakout rooms, and we had the team meeting rooms, training rooms, which is where I was. And it was just a really nice place and environment to work. I'm aware of thoughts around noise, and I have to say that I was there in the peak of it being a call centre with over 700 staff, and they worked shifts, and admittedly over the lunchtime when we had the changeover, there could be a little bit of noise, but I am also really good friends with the ex-facilities manager who looks after Horizon and Willow building, and I spoke to him about the noise, and he said that since he was in that building, he was unaware of complaints about the noise. In the early days, I think Aviva spent quite a bit of money setting up screening and sectioning off areas which would minimise the noise going across the floor, and I believe they installed various other equipment to actually minimise the noise. I'm equally aware of things being said about the rain, and again, I asked the next manager who's recently relocated from that building, and also I asked the facilities manager, and he said he never had one complaint about the rain. And my friend who was the manageress said, yes, in torrential rain and storms, you could hear the rain on the roof. So I guess that sort of weather doesn't happen very often, and are we going to base our decision on that building on whether it might rain a few times over the winter? I don't know. But having spent the last 2 years working from home, I'm sure many of us are aware of the other noise that happens around us. We've had children, we've had dogs barking, we've had deliveries to the door. So I don't know that noise from a staff's perspective would perhaps be a deal breaker. I think from our perspective, from staff, I've had the luxury of working at Thorpe Lodge, and things that concern us had always been parking. There were days when I wouldn't want to go out on my business visits because I knew I'd be carting brochures and various materials back up the Yarmouth Road on my return because I couldn't get parking space. And the temperature control, you were either freezing in the winter and sitting with a coat on, or you were boiling the bag in the summer when you were up in the planning departments and it was boiling. I've equally now had the experience of working from the house because my directorate was relocated to Long Stratton, and that has very much the open plan type office, which I wasn't used to. And any of my colleagues would tell you that I'm quite loud, and I don't seem to have affected those working around me, and those with headsets on who are taking inbound calls. Again, I think it just comes to the point where you're too busy doing your own job, you don't actually notice what's going on around. But I do notice when I'm at the house, when it rains, my hair gets wet, and I have to make sure I don't fall over the many buckets that are listed around the building. So going back to Horizon, I think it's a fantastic building. No matter the time of day when you're inside, it's lit so well, you almost feel that you are constantly outside. I think to have everybody back in one building would be amazing. We've all lost 2 years of our lives, not seeing loved ones and family, and I still feel that massive divide is there, that I don't get to work with many of my colleagues that I've spent years working with because we are located between the two sites. Car parking, there's a massive car park there, and again, there will be equal amounts of staff that would walk, cycle to work, and the bus route is really good, and we have the park and ride just across, so parking was never an issue when I was there. We've also got all the wonderful facilities around us with the Broadland Business Park and all of the amenities for people to have walks at lunchtime and go and get food. But I think the big thing really is us all being under one roof, and in order to get us all back together and continue this journey as the one team, we really do need the one building.
On page 67. I fully understand what Councillor Roper has said about the gravitas of the situation, and I will agree that we do need to have this as a recorded vote. This is a very important vote for the council, and residents should see that we are making the right decisions. So if I can take you to the recommendations. Recommendation 1, this is Cabinet recommends to Council, agree to purchase the Horizon Centre, either individually or jointly with South Norfolk Council. 2, share any future capital costs on an equal basis between both Broadland Council and South Norfolk Council if jointly owned. 3, share the revenue expenditure related to the Horizon Centre in accordance with the agreed appointment model in place for that financial year. And 4, share any net income from third-party occupancy or rental of the Horizon building on an equal basis between both Broadland Council and South Norfolk Council if jointly owned. Thank you.
I'd like to second that.
Seconder, please?
I'll second that, please. And I'd also reserve the right to speak.
Thank you very much.
Council, for awareness, we have had, just to clarify, Councillor Vincent also seconding the recorded vote within there as well.
Yes, I would also second the recorded vote, just for clarity.
Thank you. Can I have a show of hands, all those in favour of a recorded vote, please? Thank you, that's carried.
Carried, yeah. Now we have a proposer and a seconder, and we can now open the debate. Anyone wish to speak? Yeah. Councillor Ward, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I loved the Horizon building from the first time I saw it, and once I'd had the tour inside, that just reinforced what I thought about it. We've heard from Councillor Emsell about many savings to be made, and we can be sure that there will be substantial savings on our council tax every year going forward. One of the additional benefits for me personally is the new facilities nearby, such as McDonald's, Lidl, the lovely lounge on top of the grid serve with the M&S food and the W.H. Smith. So there are added bonuses. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roper, please.
I've just gone by who I've seen, so Councillor Roper, please.
Okay, right. I thought the leader of the opposition would get first go, but there we are. Okay, well, we're not here tonight to talk about the principle of being in one building. We are talking about purchasing this building, which is the Horizon Centre. We have 2 buildings already between the 2 councils. We could potentially locate in either of them. So actually, it's not the principle of having one team together we're discussing. It's about this particular purchase. I'm interested in Councillor Emsell raising it particularly very much as a Broadland venture, and I have to admit a shiver goes up my spine a little bit at the thought of Broadland doing this individually, purchasing the building. But that's perhaps something we'll discuss more in closed session. And perhaps something else that we're discussing in closed session is the governance around the purchase and whether or not essentially we give Cabinet a blank check to negotiate, or whether the council puts some parameters around that. Again, that's for closed session. Now, one of my red lines in approaching this was that we need to be based in Broadland. I'm happy that the proposals are that we will be remaining in Broadland, regardless of what happens tonight. Clearly, our colleagues in South Norfolk have a different view on that. They are happy to come to Broadland. They do not feel as tied to South Norfolk. But they are very much tied to wanting to go to the Horizon building and are not prepared to go 1 mile up the road to locate at Thorpe Lodge, which is a shame that the Thorpe Lodge option wasn't explored more fully as a result of that intransigence from South Norfolk, because I think it might have answered a lot of questions that members have raised in committee. I mean, it's not giving away any secrets, and it's not going below the line to say that there were differences between the Horizon building and moving to Thorpe Lodge. And it's not giving away any trade secrets to say that those differences did run into millions. But I will stop talking about that there. So it is a difficult one because there is a building here which could be argued has not been adequately explored at this stage. It's the intransigence from South Norfolk. Essentially, we are rolling over and letting South Norfolk tickle our tummy on this one because they're saying the only way this is going to happen is if we move to a new building, not come to Thorpe Lodge. There are various questions which I think residents will ask. They will ask, is this just a vanity project in terms of moving to the new building rather than keeping a perfectly good building that you've got? And with various talk at different times of local government reorganisation, they may be concerned that residents will end up with a white elephant and how we're going to have to deal with that. Those are all questions which I'm sure we will deal with in closed session. But setting those out now as a general principles as to where I'm coming from as we discuss this matter further. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roper. Councillor Moncur, please.
Thank you, Chairman. As a councillor, we save substantial revenue and costs, and looking at the figures, it just makes sense to do this. And any savings that we can make has got to be good for the residents of Broadland. It's a no-brainer for me.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, in addition to what my colleague has just said, long term, it would save both councils considerable capital costs. And I think we should push forward with it unreservedly.
Second. Councillor Hollands, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to agree with most of what my colleague, Councillor Roper, has said. In fact, he said most of the things I was going to say. I will want to add, however, that there is still risk involved in buying a new building, and there is capital costs involved. I think the fact that we haven't explored Thorpe Lodge properly and fully, and that's been declined on several occasions, to have a look to see what could be done here, it's difficult to say that we actually will make all those savings that are being suggested. So I think there are things that need obviously bigger discussion when we get to financial elements of that. But I think in principle, I still consider that this is a building that has a lot of risks and a lot of issues with it that are not as clear-cut and as environmentally friendly as has been suggested.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Councillor Crotts, please.
Thanks, Chairman. I think one of the things that for me was really powerful was the video that we saw from Jane, where she was talking around the building and she talked around the lighting in the building and how that will help with energy. And obviously we're all in this position at the moment where energy costs are increasing for us as individuals and for all businesses, and this building will be no different, that its energy costs, will increase. But what I think we should take great comfort from looking at the Horizon building is that the energy setup there, being so much more efficient than an older building like this, will help with the costs and also with the environment that staff and individuals are working in. So I think, again, that's another positive we should really take into account. Thank you.
Councillor Lawrence, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 points that I am concerned about. One on carbon neutrality, one on the virus vulnerability of the building, and overall suitability and risk. Start with carbon neutrality. I am concerned that we don't get accused of greenwashing. The Horizon site is carbon neutral. But without the installation of solar panels to offset carbon emissions of the gas boiler, electricity usage from the grid and embedded carbon, the Horizon building itself is not actually carbon neutral.
If Thorpe Lodge were to be fitted out with solar panels to reduce its carbon footprint by offsetting, in comparison with Horizon Building, only 1,000 panels would be required. If Thorpe Lodge were to proceed with implementing the same carbon neutrality strategy of installing solar panels, then we would be using the latest, more efficient panels that are now available with a 25-year expectancy from this point onwards. Horizon can only claim carbon neutrality by offsets from those solar panels alone, and it takes another 1,540 panels to do so. That's 1,540 more panels than Thorpe Lodge would require. So it's a total of 2,540 solar panels at the Horizon site are critical to maintain their current claim of carbon neutrality and indeed cost savings in running the building. So it is the site that is carbon neutral and not the building. The building, for building like for like, Thorpe Lodge offers more opportunity to be carbon neutral for less cost and less risk of wasting public money in a time of cost of living crisis. We have a responsibility to show that we are responsible with our funds and not taking unnecessary risks in a very uncertain time. In terms of virus vulnerability, the Horizon recirculation air system for health with COVID and viruses is extremely concerning, and it hasn't really been addressed, and we needs to be taken into consideration going forward, and the well-being of staff, residents and visiting visitors and councillors put forward as front and centre in that going forward. And in terms of just the risk, overall, Thorpe Lodge on the analysis stands, as it stands, emits less carbon from gas boilers and less pollution than Horizon on direct emissions of fossil fuel, simply because the building and the main office block is more suited to the space, office and space and uses it in an efficient way. That is due to the ceiling heights, which in the Horizon building are approximately 2.5 metres with between the floors, meaning less, so that there is less wasted space in Thorpe building, and it is more efficient in terms of to improve the heat in that case. I think that the Thorpe Lodge option is best for residents and taxpayers at this time, with less risk and potential to demonstrate more carbon neutrality with better and more up-to-date solar technology, including we could incorporate batteries for the same cost that we are going to require to refit the Horizon building, which has not been considered or factored in sufficiently. I think Horizon will take time to be ready and construct the internal space to meet our requirements. So we run the risk of holding all three buildings at once, spending on ever spiraling construction costs and not being able to sell our current assets for at least 3 years, which is the time it's taken on Horizon to actually anyone interest to be shown on it. So I think the opportunity to refit Thorpe with better and more efficient solar panels and infrastructure, including batteries, and thus increasing its reliability, also means we would carry less risk and that we will less likely to be stuck with stranded assets in the future and less reliant on property prices and building development uncertainties. We are in an unprecedented moment of uncertainty, and I think we need to be very careful how we spend the reserves, and those reserves have come from taxpayers. So that's my points.
Thank you.
Councillor Lawrence, can you turn your... Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Councillor Davis, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to really follow on the discussion from the last speaker. It is disappointing that there hasn't been a more in-depth assessment of what could be done in terms of Thorpe Lodge carbon, energy efficiency, carbon reduction, and so on. But as has already been mentioned, one of the key things is how rapidly can we decarbonize? And it's a difficult decision without that assessment. And so it puts us in a difficult position. But given what could potentially be done with Horizon, and given some of the difficulties which really haven't been properly explored with Thorpe Lodge, there are opportunities with the Horizon building, and it does potentially allow us to reduce carbon emissions much more quickly than other options are available. But there are, and I'd refer to the energy reduction feasibility study on page 21.
Sorry, Councillor, you can't.
No.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Well, that's something that I'd like to come to. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So there are possibilities in terms of working with the Horizon building, which I think it would be useful to explore, and to perhaps get some clear commitments going forward, so that we can then make a reasonable decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peck, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just before I start on my point, I just find it quite amazing that somebody would think there's more embedded carbon in the new building than in Thorpe Lodge and Long Stratton combined. But never mind that. Yeah, I'd like to talk about the parking, because the point was made in the video, and when I talk to staff and from the experience of members, trying to get parked at Long Stratton is an absolute nightmare. Parking here is terrible. The new building will have much easier access for our residents and our members and staff, better than they currently enjoy, with excellent transport links, public transport, road close to the A47 and the Broadland Northway, and also cycle paths. And of course, it's very close to the park and ride as well. And I think from that point of view, it's something that nobody seems to be talking about, but it was mentioned by the member of staff as being a major problem, and I think this will resolve that. Before I finish, if I could move on to Councillor, I've got his name now, Mr. Roper, Councillor Roper, sorry. It's not like I don't know you, but I forgot your name. He did mention the famous words vanity project, and he said the same thing when I wanted to spend 2.1 million making County Hall accessible for disabled people and everything. And we've just won the Blue Badge Award for accessibility, which means that building is more accessible to disabled people and people with various mental problems and difficulties and visual impairment than any other building in Europe. So when I hear the word vanity project, I mean, nobody could call this building accessible for disabled people or in Long Stratton either. So I think the new building will also be a benefit in that respect as well, in that it will be more accessible to people with disabilities, to members of the public and everybody. So for me, I will be voting in favour of the new building. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Catchpole, please.
On this one? There we are. Thank you, Chair. I think having sat through the SAAC and ONS committee meetings on this, and neither being in a full agreement with the recommendations, I struggle a little bit to figure out how we even have got here this evening, but here we are. I struggle on 3 points. One is that there is a possibility that one team working will change in future, and then Broadland could be left with a white elephant. On another point, the opportunity cost of this move, i.e. what else could Broadland District spend the capital sum on over the next 20 years, such as temporary housing or any other project that both reduces costs for our council, but also improves the lives of our residents? I haven't seen any exploration of that at all during this process, and based on both of those points, I'm afraid I won't be supporting this move at this time to this building. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hartley. Yeah, Councillor Hartley, please.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I was quite surprised to hear Councillor Emsall say this is something that has been on the back burner for around 10 years. As I remember at one of the very first Zoom meetings 2 years ago, a question was asked whether there were any plans for a new building to be purchased for the one team to work together. And we were told then that it was so far ahead, it just wasn't even worth thinking about. So to be told tonight that this has been in possible progress for 10 years and to now be at this point, when 2 years ago we were told it wasn't even a thing, I'm quite surprised. And from that, going back to another of Councillor Emsall's comments about this administration being trusted with finances, I'll go back to my point at ONS. Anyone who remembers the EcoCube scandal may feel differently about this administration and finances. Thank you.
Thank you. Fisher. Yeah. Councillor Fisher, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't sure if you'd seen me from the or your colleague. It's interesting that people have referred to the solar panels and the energy efficiency of this particular building, and I think, as Councillor Peck mentioned, there are two buildings. There's this and South Norfolk. I know both the buildings pretty well. I've been involved in this building since 1989, and I'm a past resident of Long Stratton, and in fact the building of South Norfolk sits on land that used to belong to my aunt. So, and my uncle worked there. And both, thank you, Councillor Beadle. I'll try to carry on despite your interruption. And in fact, both the buildings are 1960s, 1970s building, grossly inefficient. I was cabinet member, as some people will realise, from 08 to 2018, 10 years. And in that time, we looked at how we could make this building more energy efficient. We put some solar panels on the roof. We actually started off with an energy performance certificate of an F. I think we've now reduced that to a D. It may be better, but I've not been in reception for the last couple of years to look at this certificate. But we did reduce it from F to D, to my knowledge. The building, and I discussed this a number of times with previous chief execs, this building is very, very difficult to make more energy efficient than that. And I am pleased to think that we are going to be moving, hopefully, to a building that actually reduces our carbon footprint by 85%. It is a modern building. It is built more energy efficient than this. It's not a new building, I'm not saying that, but it is a better building. It is more energy efficient. And my knowledge of both the current buildings are that it would cost a fortune, and you'd be throwing good money after bad to try to make either of those efficient. We looked at putting more solar panels on this building. Interestingly, there's trees just to the south that actually shade a lot of the potential areas for sticking PV panels. The roof on the 1960s building would need reinforcing. I say that's work of 10 years of the portfolio of environmental excellence, and hence I am very pleased to support the recommendations in front of us tonight, purely for that reason. But also, I think, as was identified on the video, the staff, if we're going to have an efficient organisation, and I think that should be all of our aims, and we need to have all that staff working under one roof, and we need to have all that staff working under one roof in a suitable building, and not a 1960s energy inefficient building. The The actual location, I think, of the new building is better than this. I think Councillor Ward referred to the fact there's cafes, there's shops actually close by that staff can walk to, which is important. The other factor is the collaboration of a couple of councils down Suffolk, Forest Heath and St Edmundsbury. I worked down Forest Heath. I knew councillors that were councillors for Forest Heath. And when they actually worked together, collaborated, which we're doing, they then took the decision to actually move to one building, which was on an industrial estate, but a newer building, a much better building, everybody under one roof, and the council services improved dramatically. And I witnessed that myself as someone who used to deal with the planning department for my employers. So I've no idea why people are hesitant. And I think somebody said they wondered why we're here tonight. We're here tonight because a couple of years ago, we decided to collaborate. And we're now collaborating. That collaboration actually resulted in a ability to have a zero council tax increase this year. And I think that's what we need to bear in mind. We have to look at the future. We have to look at where we're going, and we need to join forces tonight and actually move to the new building for the sake of the staff and for the sake of our residents, because everyone will benefit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Beadle, please.
Thank you, Chair. Where do you start on this? I'll start with a video, Chair. I'm absolutely appalled at what was in that video. Absolutely appalled. It's that one of the speakers there said that with relying on off-chance conversations between the police, children's services and council officials was a major part of the running of this authority. These sorts of conversations shouldn't be off chance. They should be managed in a proper way. And that was what was actually on the video. I'm appalled at that we're relying on off chance when we're talking about children's services. It should be properly managed. That's the first one. The other one is that we are told about electricity and all the other things. When we visited those buildings, we were told that they had individual table lamps and individual fans on each table. Now, that is not factored into this. And so, can I say, if that is what is required for staff comfort, then that is actually appalling, Chairman. In this day and age, we shouldn't be having individual table lamps and individual fans. That's wrong, Chairman. If we come to location accessibility, our own reports puts Horizon building at a lower ranking than this building. Accessibility. Now, this is not commercial.
I've been really clear we can't go anywhere near the appendices in this session. I've been very clear on that at the start of the meeting, please.
Chairman, this is not confidential in the respect that it affects contractual matters. What it affects is the debate, and I think we ought to be taking these figures into account. Right, on the, and then
I have been really clear on the matter. We cannot, in private session, talk about the appendices. You may save that, thank you, for the private part of the meeting. I cannot be clear enough on that.
Well, Chairman, it's been mentioned about parking.
Well, I think that has been satisfactorily explained, Councillor Beadle.
Okay,
so,
Chairman, if we then now... It's been mentioned by various speakers that there's significantly more parking at Horizon than there is at Thorpe Lodge. Without a doubt, that is true. But this building complies with parking at the maximum level for the County Council planning guidance. And if it was a new building, we wouldn't be able to have any more. It complies with parking. And if you're actually using that as a criteria, are we as an authority saying County Council has got it wrong? And if so, we ought to be lobbying County Council to say so. And so, and then there's all the factors which previous speakers have said. Nobody's arguing against one team. I haven't heard anybody say we should have two teams. Everybody's agreed that we should have one team in one building. Nobody's saying any different. But it's which building, Chair. And this building is by far, by the council's own figures, cheaper than the other. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, can I just come back on the comments regarding the members of people, the officers who work in the help hub? The whole point of the help hub and the different agencies being there is that they all work collaboratively together. An officer saying that they share information between different departments and different people working in the help hub altogether is not a problem. That is why we bring them all together, why they work in the help hub, why there are children's services, police, and our council staff there. They're all working together. And the fact that they can have the information available to use for the benefit of the residents is an advantage.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just as you know, I was heavily involved with the working group, vice chair of the working group with South Norfolk for 2 distinct sessions. The first session under terms of reference, which we agreed in terms of looking at all aspects of the accommodation, including Thorpe Lodge at that point in time, new build, etc. And the second phase where we were restricted from looking at Thorpe Lodge because, as Dan Rope quite rightly pointed out, South Norfolk had declared that they would not move to Thorpe Lodge. I need to link this actually with something that was said on the video about the noise issue. If we had a heavy rainstorm, would this be a deal breaker? Well, no, it wouldn't. The problem is there are many reasons why we should not be moving into this building. That's only one issue. The acoustic report, which we will not go into in terms of commerciality, Emma, perfectly understand that, points to a number of issues which we can discuss later on. So there's a professional report there in terms of that. The New Horizon building, is it suitable for our needs? This is a clear issue that we examined during the working group deliberations. And again, not a commercial issue for Viva, because we're talking about our needs. For our needs, the building is oversized, it's over capacity, has a huge central atrium, which we can't use to work in, that we have to heat up in terms of air, etc. And therefore, we will be paying reserve money, taxpayers' money on square meters that we simply do not need to purchase, simply do not need to purchase to run. And it's okay, reports and references have had back at this, whilst we in open session at SEAC and also ONS to say, well, you know, we could rent this out. Really, what's the need here in terms of running efficiency and in terms of value for pound per square foot or meter? So we'll be paying out for square meters we simply do not need and to heat up as well. There are other issues in terms of risk. The issue with carbon neutrality, again, we know it's an offset. That's an open public situation. It does use gas boilers. They're going to have to be replaced. We know that. So that's all part of the business issue that's got to be focused on in terms of finance. We also know that if we change the recirculation system, which again, this is open public knowledge, all companies and offices have had to look at this, the carbon offset will change because the gas boilers will use more gas and put more carbon into the air, and therefore running costs will increase. That needs to be addressed as well. If we look at Thorpe Lodge, our proposal from the working group, which SEAC endorsed as well, committee, originally was that we should look at Thorpe Lodge. It had value to looking at because the original consultant's report said that we would achieve far more savings, significantly more savings in the millions than we would in terms of purchasing New Horizon. Significant amounts of money more. Therefore, the political move by South Norfolk to not investigate this in the spirit of proper collaboration, which we're supposed to be involved with, for the benefit of all residents, when they're prepared to move out of South Norfolk and into Broadland is beyond me, totally and utterly beyond me, when mega millions could be saved by both councils as a result. I find that personally deplorable. In terms of Thorpe Lodge, it could lend itself to a much more efficient situation than the Horizon for our needs, because we could put insulation in, we could put double glazing in, we can retrofit. And also in terms of car parking, we know the consultants got this wrong. First of all, the figure was 133, then it was 188. I walked around with my surveyor's wheel, we've actually got 199. And that's also in terms of the plan for Broadland. We're not far off of what the consultant said we need. We can put carports in, more parking and more solar panels as well. So risk. We are spending money. We would be spending money to buy a new Horizon. There's a risk with that because we're involving capital. We've got to spend money there as well in terms of the future. There's absolutely no risk with Broadland, as we already own the asset and we can simply cost retrofitting to reduce costs and reduce carbon footprint. So therefore, this is a lower risk and a more affordable solution, and also would produce more savings. And the Horizon building is simply not the right building. We also discussed on the working group that really, during the final session we had, that really, we all agreed that, by the way, for our needs. However, half the working group believed that the Horizon building was the only one available that may fit our needs, and the other half said we should actually find another building that does fit our needs, plus look at Thorpe Lodge. So at this stage, I don't know where the fire has been on this. Where is the fire? Why have we been rushing into this in the first place? Both councils claim to be in a good position in terms of their reserves and ongoing. Where is the fire? It reminds me, going back to the feasibility study, when the Lib Dems put forward a proposal that we should wait a year to embark on a business case study rather than proceeding just on feasibility. It would have taken a year. That would have been long gone 2 years ago. Would have had a much more defined way forward, which probably would have talked about a building as well. And it reminds me of this really, fast and furious, and why. So there are significant problems here, there's risks, and at the end of the day, I do think we need to give each other respect for our different views here about castigation as well, because we're all trying to represent their best interest. For me, and being involved in the working group for so long, and looking at this in detail, it doesn't stack up for us, the Horizon building. Simple as that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Is there anyone else?
Anyone else?
Oh, sorry,
Yes.
sorry, Councillor Nerdin. Apologies.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of comments I want to make, and that is that I have been for a while concerned about the service that we deliver as a council to our residents in the district. So for me, it is all about our staff being able to provide a quality service to the community. I was very pleased to hear that following a recent survey by the managing director, this was at an Overnest meeting that I attended, that 78% of our staff are in favour of moving into one building, and that one building being the Horizon building. So, of course, I will be supporting this motion. Thank you.
I think we're getting near the area of wanting to go into private session. I've got Councillor Britcher wanting to come in, Councillor Murrell, Councillor Holland. I think we will then go into private session at that point, because I think we've had a very robust debate. So Councillor Britcher, Councillor Holland and Councillor Murrell, please.
Chairman, on a point of order, it's for the chairman. It's for you to decide whether we should go into private session, and it's you to decide whether we've had a fair and a successful debate. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent point of order, Councillor Beadle, as always, but you saw myself and the councillor just have a discussion. Thank you.
Well, in which case, Chairman, you should declare.
I think we have had a very comprehensive discussion so far, and I think it is appropriate to move on to the next stage. Yeah, Councillor Britcher, please. Councillor.
Thank you. I would like to just make one point. Yes, I was elected in 2019, but one thing I did notice when I walked through the door was an area in Broadland that nobody's actually really sort of discussed tonight, and that was actually the canteen. It was vibrant, staff were in there, and yes, I actually partaked in several very good meals, value for money. So it seems that unfortunately that's gone for whatever reason, and we all think that's probably the pandemic. But the alternative for the one team in this Horizon building, which I will be voting against, is that there's a cafe outside. So where other members of the public will be at the same time. So I'm not sure that's actually the best place for council staff, because canteens do help everybody knit together, because it's a free, relaxed and sort of area. And also Broadland used to, the canteen was good value for money. Whereas if you've got a private enterprise down the road where everybody and his mate can go into, that is actually not beneficial to council staff. I'm sorry, I just don't see that. Everybody knows that the Broadland canteen was good and the staff enjoyed it. But I haven't seen any staff come along and say that they actually they didn't like it and they'd rather go to a cafe somewhere outside of the building. But that's my bit.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Morrow, please.
You've got Councillor Holland.
Yeah.
Councillor Holland.
Holland.
Jonathan Empsall wants a right reply.
Thank you. I just wanted to correct something, as I understood it, that Councillor Nurden has said, because I was at that overview and scrutiny meeting, and as I understood it, it was a poll of people who were on a Zoom meeting were asked for their opinion, of whom 250 people were present, and roughly 80% had agreed this was the case. So my point would be that that's not actually 78% of the full members of staff, just to be clear about that.
Chairman, could I assist? There were some 250 members of staff on the call. Of those 250 members of staff, 78% were in favour of the move.
So not 78% of the entire staff, which is the implication that Councillor Nurden made. So that's all I'm trying to clarify.
Councillor Empsall, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I'd just like to come back on a few of the points, because obviously there have been quite a few points raised about what I've said. I think we're always talking about, at no point have I said that the Horizon building is perfect. We will be working on that moving forward, but it will be easier to work on that building than it will to work on this building, which then leads me on to why are we not looking more at this building? I think we've done a lot of work on our project, this project, to see what buildings we work on. We are in collaboration with South Norfolk, and to be fair, in the same way that we actually said that we wouldn't go to Long Stratton, it is the same that they're saying that this was too small for them. And I feel that that is something which is, we are in collaboration with them. So we are working together with them. Now, the fact that we have a building that we could move to that is still in Broadland, that is a lot newer than this building, that gives us a lot more opportunity. I take on board Councillor Lawrence's points about putting more solar panels on here. I'm not sure where you stick 1,000 solar panels on this building. I just can't picture it in my head. There was talk about the air quality of the new building. One of the things that the staff are looking forward to is an open environment, so that they're not all on top of each other in small offices. They want that feeling of being there are more breakout places there. There are two little kitchen areas. Sometimes people do actually want to have a break from the office and go out to a little cafe or around the things. There are opportunities for that and everything like that. There's more scope to do things at the Horizon building. And for me, all the questions that have been asked, I think mostly we've got a lot of paperwork here and most things have been answered. And I still struggle to understand how councillors that at the end of 2019 wanted to declare a climate emergency are now in a point where they are fighting against us losing 84% of our carbon footprint. I don't understand. And this, to me, anything that we can do, this is a step in the right direction. It doesn't get us to where we need to be. We will be working forward more on this, but the savings we can make mean that we will have the opportunity to be one of the leading councils in Norfolk moving forward. And regarding the new build, I'm referring to the fact that we've had a model sitting in the council chamber for what seems like the last 2 years anyway, but that has been here for a lot longer than that. It was always an aspiration to move, but the administration looked at the fact that it would cost an absolute fortune to move, so that's why we've never done it. We are now in a position where we can move and it's financially viable. And that's mainly because we're working in collaboration with Safe Norfolk. Thank you.
Councillor Morrow, please.
Thank you. I'd like to pick up on a couple of things that were said there. So, as Councillor Fisher pointed out, we made a 0% increase on our council tax this year. The future savings that will come from this, and Councillor Catchpole was saying about investing in capital and other projects. This investment in this capital, and therefore the payback period on this building, enables us to do lots more projects, and we will be able to fund future projects to go into there. Now, the rest of my question will have to come in the next session, but.
He can go with the leader. Second. Right. I think as we have had a comprehensive discussion on these points now, we need to go to the private sector to extend it to items which we haven't been able to discuss so far. Can we have a vote on that, please? All those in favour?
That's fine.
Is that enough?
On what grounds?
Sorry, I'm just trying to get this one right. I do appreciate that elements relating to specific financial matters of third parties are commercially sensitive, but there is a public interest that the general merits of this scheme are discussed. And I appreciate that a lot of those general merits have already been discussed, but things like the noise report that was mentioned earlier, I don't see how that relates to a third party commercially sensitive issue. And while at a time where the public is experiencing severe financial hardship, this council should be seen to be...
Sorry, can I stop you there, please? This is a meeting in public, not a public meeting. So, sorry, can you let the monitoring officer speak?
So we've had the ruling from the chair. The chairman has determined that we've had a full debate in the public session. We will be moving to private. The chairman has indicated that there are elements that are in the report, all below the line, that we need to explore, and we cannot discuss those in the public arena. We have a mutual confidentiality agreement in place as well, which further emphasises the need to go into private session. I will therefore read out the exclusion of press and public as requested by the chairman. I move that the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining items of business, because otherwise information was exempt information by virtue of paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as amended by the Local Government Access to Information Variation Order 2006, would be disclosed to them. Thank you. Could we stop the live stream, please?